Hello and welcome to Semi Chum Studio. I'm Eilish and it is time for another vague tutorial. So I will be taking you through the process of how I made a children's book by hand. I'm mainly just going to be going over the actual bookmaking process, so the binding and the making of the cover, so you can kind of apply this process to any kind of book that you're wanting to make. And at the end of the video I will read to you my story. I'm so happy with how this whole thing turned out and I'm really excited to share it with you, so I hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. And on that note, let's get started. So starting with the binding, we're going to get our ruler, embroidery thread, needle, hole punch things, scissors, pencil, eraser, and 2 pieces of card for your cover and your back, and your paper that you are wanting to bind. So we're just going to put everything to one side and just work on our front cover. So we're going to measure 3 marks 2 centimeters apart, starting from the bottom, and then 1 centimeter in from the side. And we're just going to do that from the top and the bottom so that we've got 6 in total. I learnt this binding method from C Lemon's DIY single sheet book binding tutorial, so if you're confused by any of my instructions, definitely check out her video as well because she makes it pretty clear. And then just taking your sharp object of choice and punching your holes where you've marked them out. I like a thumbtack just because it gives you something to hang on to and it doesn't hurt your fingers. But the thumbtack does make quite small holes, so then just go through with the needle that you'll be using for the binding, just to make sure that they're the right size, and it just makes it a little bit easier. And then use an eraser as a thimble because it is handy. And now that we've made the holes in our cover, I'm just taking the first page and using my cover as a guide and just clipping them so that they're in place. And you can do this with up to 4 pages at a time, just to make things a little bit faster. And once you've done that with all of your pages, we're then just going to repeat it again with our back cover, and then we're all done for hole punching. And now we're just going to put all of our pages in the right order, putting the cover and the back, and this just makes it easier for knowing what's next and not accidentally putting the wrong page in the wrong place. Now get your embroidery thread. You're going to need 1 strand per hole, and I liked the way the ombre looked, so that's what I'm doing here. And now we're going to remove all of the pages apart from the last page and our back cover, and we will work each page singularly. And cut your thread, but don't cut as much as I did. It's too much. Bear with me while I try to explain this. So you go through the hole, pull it out, and tie your knot. Then grab your second to last page and go through from the top, pull it through and out. Okay, and then we're going to go back up through the bottom and pull, and then going between the 2 pages and pull that through. I hope that makes sense. And say hello to Maggie. So we're going to take our next thread that we're wanting. I swear she knows how cute she is and that she can just get away with anything because of it. And repeating that process, going through the top, pull, my god, she's so annoying. And then it gets a little bit harder the further you get away from the edge. You have to kind of go under the pages. And then just tie your knot there as well. So then we're going back through the top page from the top and out. We could play a game of how many scratches did I have before this project and how many do I have at the end of it. And then going back up through the back cover and pull through. And just be a little bit careful with how tight you're pulling. You want it to be tight but not rip your page. So then we're just going back in between the two pages and pull through. And just ignore that little thread that's poking out for now. We will hide that later on. And repeat that process across the rest of them until you've done all 6. So now taking the next page and going through the top, pulling, and then this is where it starts to differ from the cover pages. So instead of going through the one directly below, we're going through the one second from the top. So when you repeat this, do it from the second from the top, always, not always going back to the very bottom one. So we'll just go through that again. So through from the top and pull. Then the second gap, go through that and pull tight. And then you're just going to repeat that for all of the pages. They're all the same. And this is why I really like the single binding method, because when you open them up, they lie flat. I thought that was really nice. Cool, so we've got all of our pages bound and it's time to do the top cover, which is pretty much the same but just a tiny bit different. And how cool does that bound edge look? It looks so nice. And taking your first thread, it starts off the same, so through the hole from the top, and pull. You can see I used way too much thread and it was annoying. Then back through the second and pull. Then up through the first gap. So through there, around and out. And then we're just going to put it back through so that we can tie our knot and hide it. And it does make it easier to do this on the edge of a table. When you're like flicking your pages back and forth, it can be easier to have like a gap there. And once we've tied our knot, we're just going to make sure it's nice and tight and cut it off. Maybe cut a little bit more than what I did. I had a little bit of trouble with the length of that, but yep. Okay, so one more time, back through the top, and around, and out and pull. Then through the second gap from the top, and it's a little bit trickier, so I just kind of pull it out like that when there's not enough room to go around, and then back. So same thing, but just like, yeah, different, you know. Then up through the first gap, and same thing. So we're just going around and out. Oh, whoops. Okay, I missed a step there. Go around, out, then back through and tie the knot. I don't know why I did that. Anyway, pull your knot tight and cut your thread, and repeat that for the other holes. Cool, so now that that's all done, we're just going to admire our work for a sec. And we're just going to tuck in those threads. So all we're going to do is make them go around that other thread. You'll see. Yep. So like pull it through, then back up, over and through, and again around, back up, over, around. Cool, and then do that for the rest of them, and then just trim them. And the binding part is done. How exciting is that? So cool, looks like a real book now. And now we're going to proper admire our work, and let's have a look through my book. I had to really think a lot about whether I actually wanted to handwrite the story on the pages, but because I painted these all like by hand individually, and they're not printing or anything, I kind of felt like I didn't really have a choice, but I'm actually really glad I did it, even though my writing is a little bit atrocious. Yeah, it's just really cool that every part of this was hand done, and really nice to do things that aren't on the computer or digitized. So yeah. And when I first started painting these, it was a little scary painting on the back of another page. I felt like I couldn't redo, but luckily I didn't have to do that. So yeah, it all worked out. And look at that, a real book from what started as pretty much nothing. So it's really cool. And now it's time to make our cover. So I'm just taking like some, you could use card, but I didn't have any, so I just used like a thick paper. And I'm just gonna make a spine. So I'm just measuring the width of the spine. I did this a little too big. I measured from the outside, like from one edge to the other, but what I actually should have done was measured from inside the covers, so like the page width, but I did just trim that down later, so it wasn't too much of a biggie. And taking our fabric, we are just going to trace the outside of the book. I did this in a roundabout way, so stick with me here. It worked out though, so I'm just going around the whole outside, and it did actually end up making quite a nice guide for the size and that, but if you have a better way, then go on, go ahead. This is just how my brain works. So now we're just going to place the front cover down and trace along that line. Then put our spine in and do the same thing. This is where, if we had have gone off that other one, it would have been way too small to fit around the whole thing. So then putting the back cover on the edge of our trace spine and doing it like that. So now we're just going to measure 1.5 centimeters around the whole thing so that we have something to tuck back around and glue in so our cover stays on. And just joining all those dots together. And cutting it all out. And I am so excited about this part. So from my last video, I did this with the watercolors on the fabric, but this works so much better and you don't have to use as much paint. So I'm so excited. So take your colors that you're wanting and just start by adding a little bit of water so that they mix properly. And this looked way too pink for me, so I added a little bit of yellow ochre and some more water. And once you've got it to the color that you like and it's all mixed in nicely, then just add lots of water and you've got it all ready to go. And this is just so cool. And then just paint that on to your fabric. Every time I watch these back, all I can ever think about is how bad my circulation is. Like, oh my gosh, look at how purple my hands are. I should eat some garlic. But also, I'm very happy with this technique, so it doesn't bother me too much. Like, for those of you who managed to make it through all 40 minutes of my last video, how much faster is this? Like, I think it must have taken me a few hours to do it all with the water and the watercolor, but I managed to do this in like 20 minutes. In saying that, I managed to somehow have an even longer video this time, so. And once you're done, remembering to dry it flat, yay! So this is the cover image that I made for this, and I'm just gonna put it on the inside and I'm going to trace it. Although I realized that I couldn't see anything that I was doing and I traced it on the window, so you don't get to watch me do that for long. Now that we've got our guide there, we're just going to put that aside. And I'm just going to quickly paint the spine because it's recycled and I wanted it to kind of match. Not that you're going to see this anyway, but I don't know. And just taking our black paint, I'm just going to paint the words. And while we're watching that come together, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about my story. So the story is for my niece Piper, and it is her birthday today when I'm posting this, so happy birthday, Piper. And it's about her and her cat going on an adventure, and the setting is based on their house. So all of the things that they come across are things that are in their backyard, and I just thought it was really sweet to have a little story like that. And yeah, she is also the biggest animal lover ever, so I really hope that she enjoys the story and sees herself helping out the little animal and hanging out with Fred. And now we're just going to start painting the actual image. I know that this is long, so I will put timestamps throughout the video, and feel free to skip to whatever part. I just can never bring myself to edit them out because I just love seeing it all come together, and I love watching videos of time lapses of people painting, so probably a little selfish on my part, but you know, you can skip it. And I know that it makes my videos seem like a bit of a mishmash of everything from tutorial to painting time lapse to whatever else you want to call it. I feel like every time I've tried to do like an art businessy thing or whatever, I always get told that I need to focus on one thing at a time, and that I blur things too much, and that I'll never have a target audience because of that. But I don't know, I really enjoy it, and I just am not willing to give up on what I like. And I think that if I just keep doing what I enjoy doing, that it will find people that like what I do, and if that happens, that's cool, and if not, it doesn't really matter too much because I'm having fun. And it's kind of like the same thing, like people are always like, oh, jack of all trades, master of none, but I don't know, it just seems boring to me to not want to, I don't know, have an idea of, oh, you know what, I could make a book, and then to make a book, you know what I mean? I don't know. And maybe I do take it a little bit too far and get a little bit obsessive. And once I have that idea of make a book, I then do nothing else for the next month apart from make a book, and I will probably never make another book again. But I don't know, I'll figure it out as I go along. I mentioned in my last video how much I love painting acrylic on canvas fabric, and it is just, I love it so much. I'm doing it again here, and the colors, the like paints, they all just blend together, and the pigment, once it kind of dries, they like dry down and into each other,
and I just think it's so nice. But I posted that like a month ago and I haven't tried to do an actual painting, but I do have ideas about what I would like to do with that as well. But I then went back afterwards because I was like, oh, I like acrylics again. I'm going to try and do an acrylic painting. So I tried to do acrylic painting on just like bought canvases, and I hate it. I hate the way it feels on the primer. I don't like it, but I like it here. So I'm just going back and forward through lights and darks and just building it up. And I spend the most time on the skin and the face, but that's the thing that we as people notice the most. Like if like a cat's face is slightly wrong, we're not really going to notice, but if we get something wrong on a human, we just immediately like hate it. Like our brains are just designed to be able to recognize like slight differences in people. So I like to take extra care and detail for that. Sometimes I do wonder if I take things like this a little bit too far, or if my expectations are a little bit high, because not everyone is as, sorry, I've just jumped topics here, so catch up. And not everyone is, I think, as maybe sentimental and obsessive about things as I am. And not like, I wouldn't be too upset if she doesn't like love this book, but I just know that the things that I received from particularly my uncle when I was a kid, he went to Egypt, and for anyone who doesn't know, I am obsessed with Egypt and always have been. So he went to Egypt and he brought me back just like a few gifts from there, and they are my favorite things in the whole world, and I love them so much. And yeah, not that I'm like trying to recreate that feeling for her, but I do just want her to know like how loved she is and how special she is. So I hope that she feels that from this the way that I felt that from my uncle. I also really enjoy the process of making a gift for someone, and because of my poor time management, it can sometimes mean that I don't get presents to people on time, but it's kind of like a, not like meditative process, because that's a bit pretentious, but like I enjoy that when I'm making this, kind of all I think about while I'm doing it is this other person. And I just really enjoy that connection that I then have with the thing that I then give to them. Like it's just like a feeling that I love doing. Yeah. I don't know if I explained that well, but I feel like people will relate and understand. And actually that point kind of relates back to why I wanted to start making videos in the first place, because like I love my photos app. Like I love taking photos, but mainly because I love that they store a memory, and then I just felt like a video was kind of an extension of that. Like these videos, they store the process of me making something, and they also like perfectly encapture like a point in time where I can look back and like see what I was doing and hear what I was thinking about. And maybe when Piper's older, she might be able to look back on this and, you know, see what it was like when this was made for her at the time, and listen to me read it to her while she was still young, you know. I don't know, maybe I think about things a little bit too much, but I thought it was cool. And change of topic, I really like watching these back with the palette in frame. I like watching me mix the paints. I don't know if that's like self-centered or not, but yeah, I feel like it's cool to see. And mixing water into your acrylic paint, I feel like is really key when you're painting, especially onto fabric that's unprimed. It just helps it to spread a lot easier, and yeah, I like to add water in when I'm painting with acrylics. Cool, so I just finished doing the mid-tones and now I'm going to do the highlights, and then I will do the shadows. And you see how, like, if I didn't add that water in, it would kind of just be like a big line, whereas it kind of like blends itself in a lot easier with that, and it just looks nice. And now we're painting Freddo's. He is so cute. But I did find that painting his face was quite hard because it's so dark and you can't really see his features. But after painting, what was it? How many pages? My book? I don't know. After painting that many pages with him in it, I feel like I kind of got the hang of it, getting the highlights in the right places so that his face doesn't just look like a dark blob. But yeah. And I just am wanting him to look like he does have fur, so I'm just going back between the lights and the darks without kind of covering the whole surface area, so that the other parts come through, so that he doesn't look like he's just a solid block of whichever color, so that he does look a little bit fluffy. But it does take a while to do that back and forth, so I'm just going to stop rambling for a little bit and just let you watch. And just adding in the last little highlight touches, and it really just kind of pulls it all together. Look at that. Oh, and the shadows. And now that that is all done, we're just going to put that aside to dry, and just going to make the inside cover and the inside back. So I've just got two sheets, we've got one sheet but two, two sheets of watercolor paper, and I'm just going to paint that green. And then put that one aside while it dries and start the next one. I'm just doing them exactly the same. And now it's time to actually put the book together. So we've got scissors, our spine, some glue, brush, our cover, and a ruler. I don't recommend doing this part now. I would recommend doing this after you have glued it on, because I did cut them at the wrong angle. But yep, so anyway, just when you're at that point, cut the corners off and then cut this little bit on a diagonal here and then that one straight up and down, and then just repeat that on all of them. So now we are just going to attach the spine to the inside of the cover. So I'm just gluing that there. And then placing it in the middle and making sure that it is all stuck down. So now we're just going to place the glue on the front cover and stick it to the fabric. And I did make a little bit of a mistake using a little bit too much glue in some areas. Like, you want enough so that it sticks well, but not too much that it looks funny on the fabric, like if the fabric is too wet from the glue. But yeah, anyway, so then just sticking that down, lining it up with your lines there. And then I use my hands to kind of get it to like a decent point, and then the ruler just kind of helped me to really get it in on those edges and get out any little bubbles there. This reminds me of Durasealing my books before school in the school holidays. I loved that. I loved making them all fun. Anyway, do the same thing with the back page. I distinctly remember my favorite Duracell that we ever had was the Sabrina the Teenage Witch Duracell. It was like a cartoon style, and it was purple, and it was so cool. So just pulling it tight up and over, and then press it down so that it all sticks. And once that's all done, it's time to stick in all of the edges. So just placing a bit of glue on that bottom bit there and spreading it out, and then just tuck it in and stick it down like that. And then just do the same thing on the other one. And this is why I recommended not cutting it until you've glued it on, because my edges made a gap. So that's right, anything can be fixed. So I'm just gluing this little bit of fabric on the corner there so that it kind of hides it. And then I'm just going to put some glue along the edge and then just stick it down. And then you're just going to repeat that for all of them. Whenever me and my dad do projects together, it's really funny because he's definitely a measure it twice, cut it once kind of technique. He's a Virgo and I'm a Sagittarius, so if that explains anything. But I am very much a just cut it and fix it later if it's wrong. And I'm guessing that that is the reason why I can never enjoy making any kind of anything with hard materials. Like, I just cannot with woodworking and things like that, because once you've made a mistake, I just don't know how to come back from it. But you know, with things like this, like with sewing, with knitting, with art, it's kind of, you can make all the mistakes that you want to make and you can fix them. Nothing is ever unsavable. And you'd think that the appropriate response to that would be just measure twice and cut once, but oh my god, I can't. It's too painful. I just want to do it, and I want to do it now. And would you look at that, it still looks nice and tidy-ish. It's not perfect, but you know, it still looks good. So, you know, savable. And now we're just going to take the inside covers that we made before, and I'm just checking what size I want it and then cutting it down. Look at that, I did check, but I didn't measure anything, I just cut, so. And then glue the back of the page, and we're just going to stick that on. So just get that nice and lined up for where you want it, and press down. And then just going to clip them down while they're drying so that none of the edges pop up. And if anything isn't sticking the way you want, just add a little bit more in under there and then stick it down. And just repeat the process for the back cover. And I'm just clipping this up while it dries because I didn't want any of the glue to stick to the pages. And once it's all dry, we're just going to take all the clips off and we're done. And of course, we have to admire the work, all the hard work and effort we've put in, and it looks amazing. And of course, any last thing to do is to sign your work. And now get comfy because I'm going to read my story to you.
The Adventures of Piper and Fred. For Piper. One night when Piper and Fred were tucked up in bed, a storm began to roll through the town. Rain poured from the sky and the wind barreled through the streets. Morena! The sun rose to greet them good morning, and right on schedule, Fred's tummy started grumbling. He jumped on Piper and exclaimed, "Breakfast time!" As the duo made their way down the hall to the kitchen, Piper could hear crying in the distance. Fred couldn't hear anything over his tummy grumbling and the jelly meat calling his name. She scooped the jelly meat into the bowl and went to investigate the sound. It wasn't long before the sound led her to a baby bird crying outside the front door. "What's wrong?" Piper asked as she crouched down next to the bird. "I want to go home," the bird sobbed. "The wind swept me from my nest last night and carried me here. I just want my mum," she cried. Fred had scoffed down his breakfast and waddled over to find Piper. "I'm Piper and this is Fred. We will help you find your way home," Piper assured as the little bird looked up at her through teary eyes. You will? Oh, and I'm Daisy," the little bird replied. "It's nice to meet you, Daisy. Now let's get you home." And off they went. "Do you know where home is?" Piper asked Daisy. I know it's at the top of the tallest tree in the corner of the enchanted forest, but I don't know how to get there," Daisy replied as she looked down. "We will find the way. We're adventurers, you know," Fred said smugly. They reached the entrance of the enchanted forest. The birds sang their morning songs from the treetops, and the sun danced through the canopy to the forest floor. With each step they took, they noticed the ground turning into mud. They continued on, and the mud rose higher and higher. "Uh-oh," said Daisy, as the usual grassy hill had become a massive mudslide. Piper looked around to see if there was another path when an idea came to her. "Fred, help me pull the bark off this tree," Piper called. "I hope you're not thinking what I think you are," said Fred. "Oh, come on, it will be fun," Piper replied. They both pulled at the bark with all their might until, crack! The bark came clean off and they fell flat on their bums. Piper set the bark down at the top of the hill. As Fred and Daisy hopped on the bark, Fred mumbled, "I'm not sure about this," but Daisy had a big smile on her face. Piper rolled her eyes at Fred, gave the bark a big push and jumped on. Whee! They rocketed down the mudslide and the mud splashed up onto their faces. They reached the bottom of the hill, jumped out of the bark and shook the mud off themselves. "I think we have different definitions of fun," Fred said. "Oh, Freddles," Piper replied, giving him a pat on the head. "Which way now?" Daisy asked. I'm not sure. Maybe someone in there might be able to help us," Piper pondered, pointing towards a dark, creepy house. "That place gives me the heebie-jeebies," Fred shuddered. They bravely walked into the dark house. "Hello? Is anyone home?" Piper called. There was no response. "Hello?" she called louder. Just as their eyes were beginning to adjust to the darkness, they looked up to see 8 yellow eyes open to look at them. Their gaze shifted as 1,000 more eyes appeared. "Spiders!" Fred screamed. They ran out of there as fast as their legs could take them. They kept on running until the house was no longer in sight, and then some. They came to a clearing and stopped to catch their breath. "Hey, that looks like a nice place to have a rest," puffed Piper, pointing to a swing chair at the edge of the clearing. They all sat down on the chair and swayed back and forth. Piper noticed Daisy looking sad again. "I know it must be really tough being away from home for this long. I get homesick too," Piper confided. "You do?" Daisy replied. "But you're so brave." "Everyone gets sad sometimes, especially when we're away from the ones we love," explained Piper. There was a rustling in a nearby bush, and 2 sheep emerged. "Oh, excuse me, do you know where we can find the tree in the corner of the enchanted forest?" Piper asked the sheep. "Why, of course. Follow the path behind you and it will lead you right to it, the sheep answered. Thank you, said Piper. Thank you very much, said Daisy. Meanwhile, Fred had dozed off. They followed the winding path through all its twists and turns until they reached its end, where they were met by a tall tree. This is it! This is my home! Daisy exclaimed as she hopped around flapping her wings. But how will we get to the top? Daisy pondered. Step back, I've got this one, Fred said. Fred ran toward the tree, leaped, readied his claws, and clung to the tree, then started to slide back down. Maybe not, said Fred. Psst, they heard in a little voice. They looked around. Down here, the little voice squeaked. As they looked down, they saw a little fairy peeking through the bushes. I can help. You can use a growth potion on a plant to take you up there. Eager, everyone listened, and the fairy began to explain. All you need is a pink petal, a sprig of rosemary, and enchanted mud. Mix it together and any plant it touches will grow. And just like that, the fairy was gone. They collected the 3 ingredients they needed and mixed them all together. Okay, here's the plan. I'm going to spread the potion on the vine, and once it starts to grow, we all jump on, Piper explained. And it grew, up and up and up and up, until they reached the top. My baby, cried Mama Bird. Mama, cried Daisy. They all jumped onto the branch, and Daisy ran to her mum for a big mum hug. We've been looking for you everywhere, Daisy, said Mama Bird. Piper and Fred helped me find my way home, Daisy explained. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing my baby home safely, gushed Mama Bird. It was our pleasure, said Piper and Fred as they turned to each other and smiled. Piper, Fred, dinner's ready, a voice echoed from the distance. That's my mum. We'd better be making our way back home now. Piper said. Dinner? I'm starving, said Fred. Daisy gave Piper and Fred one last hug, and the duo started to head home. Down the vine, up the winding path, through the clearing, around the spider house, over the mud hill, out the entrance, and home. Fred ran straight to his bowl brimming with jelly meat, and Piper sat at the dinner table with Mum and Dad. Did you have a good day, Piper? Dad asked. Yes, Piper answered, filled with excitement. Fred and I went on an adventure in the enchanted forest and made a new friend. That's incredible, Pipes, exclaimed Mum. As the sun set in the sky and the moon began to glow, Mum and Dad tucked Piper into sleep as Fred curled up at the foot of the bed. Sweet dreams, Piper. We love you, said Mum and Dad as they kissed her good night. And after a long day, Piper and Fred drifted off into dreamland for their next adventure. Happy second birthday, Piper. You are so loved.